It is a lottery ticket. It's a slot machine, but when you pull it down, it just gives you money. And the Big 12's next move is its smartest. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. That's JT Westerso of Locked On Utes. But apart from the Utes, he is the son of a conference commissioner who is very passionate about small schools making their way to leagues like the Big 12. And I think that's where this conference could go if they make a premature move that will ultimately help save the league long term. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. We start Sacramento State to the Big 12 Conference. Sacramento State moving up in college football has been a conversation. I think in 10 years, they will vie for a power spot because of the money they've already raised. $35 million in NIL, certain reports say. So we'll go there, how the Big 12 can get ahead of the curve. We'll also talk transfer portal. Nico Iamaleava has left Tennessee and Utah because he is the host of Locked On Utes. The fan base seems online, at least, upset at BYU because the Cougars are making money, and elders of the church that they represent are making statements that are kind of different from what we expect from BYU usually in the way they approach athletics. Once again, a subscription helps us continue our jobs, which would be great. JT, Sacramento State has picked up a ton of attention in the last year and a half or so. And to be honest with you, it's a school that was pretty much overlooked in every single facet. And then there were rumors that they were going to hire Michael Vick as their head football coach and build a 25,000 seat stadium and spend $100+ million in the project and $35 million raised in NIL. And now it seems as though in 5 to 10 years time, Sac State is going to be the next Boise State plus some, the next Washington State, Oregon State. Is there a way, and especially as you have a heart for these kind of schools, is there a way the Big 12 gets ahead of the curve and says, look, as we learned with a BYU or a UCF, having power conference resources can give you a fast track in becoming big time? Could that be the case with Sac State, the Big 12?
I don't think it is. I think it's too early. I think you have to, in order to get to a conference, and we mentioned too, yes, my dad is the commissioner of the Big Sky Conference. So I want to get that right out of the way. I haven't spoken to him about this, but I'm just going to say this. When it comes to conference realignment, who gets added based on potential versus what they've done? The whole reason Oregon State and Washington State weren't brought over to the Big 12 is because they hadn't done great in the last couple of years. If Utah doesn't win those conference championships, I don't know how that goes either. Instead, if that's Oregon State or Washington State that goes back to back late, is Utah the one who gets left behind? I think it would have been Utah, but I don't know. So Sac State has said all these great things, but Drake, we were also in the NIL era last year. They didn't have a great season last year too. You mentioned there's a reason they're looking for a new coach too. I think Brennan Marion, the former UNLV offensive coordinator, is going to do a really good job there. I think Sac State's going to be really good, but the farthest they've ever made it in the FCS playoffs, I've just looked this up, is the second round. Like, they haven't even pushed through there. They're not even a Montana or a Montana State who consistently makes runs, and in the last 2 years, each of those programs has made the title game. So to me, you got to do it first before you get the opportunity to move up and go up. And also, if you go up and you're not ready, that can be dangerous. Drake, I feel like Cincinnati's brand. This is different because we're talking about FCS making the jump, but it's still a group of 5. But Cincinnati wasn't ready, and they're taking a hit. And it doesn't feel like that's been a great move for them so far. Now, granted, like financially, sure, but their brand has been diminished. I feel like it was better for them than when they were this G5 powerhouse, and that's not what they are right now. So I don't think the Big 12 should get ahead of the curve and add Sac State now, because it could end up not being a great investment if these things don't work out and pan out. I don't know what's going to happen with all the things they've talked about trying to build and do, but I know there's a lot of schools and universities saying, we're going to give this NIL, like much NIL, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and that doesn't end up panning out. And especially like if you're going to take a chance on a program that's trying to make this big of a jump, not just from FCS, but not even group of 5. Like, they would jump all the way up to P4. Yeah. I think that's really steep. I think they got to prove it first before the Big 12 or any power conference kicks the tires.
It's a big risk. Their president, according to Google, said that their stretch goal was to join the Big 12. And it also says here, while initial goals were set at $75 million over 10 years for NIL, the group announced raising $35 million. A group called the Sac-12. They're looking for Sacramento State to go to the Pac-12. And it seems as though, according to multiple sources, they're looking at possible independence in football in the FBS to at least start, or trying to fast track their way into the FBS. They have the money. That's the one thing here that is enticing to me. I don't know. I definitely think Montana or Montana State would be left off the conversation of $35 million in NIL. Sacramento as a market is big enough to host multiple professional athletic teams as well. And that $35 million price tag, SMU just bought their way into the ACC, right? They said, we'll pay our way. If Sac State says, hey, we have the capital to pay our way and to pay our players more than any other FCS program, I don't mind being there for the Big 12 conference, especially because looking forward, I don't know who else there is. Boise State, I don't know if they're a difference maker or a difference creator for the Big 12 to catch up the SEC to the Big 10. You need a program that can raise $35 million in NIL, and Sac State's at least doing that.
Yeah, and that's what, like I said, though, it just hasn't translated yet. Like, it's how much they're raising, and yes, they're raising right now. When is it going to go into action? Like, is this the year they're a powerhouse in football? Is like that hasn't happened yet. So I still have major questions about them getting there. Drake, this is another conversation too, but I don't know how much value adding Sac State in terms of the TV market, also like the Sacramento market, like how many. Drake, I mean, you used to host Locked On Baylor, and you work with all these schools. How many teams would be excited about the Sac State edition? I don't feel like many would.
Yeah, it would be ultra super forward thinking.
Yes.
And that's a risk that if you take it may not pay off very well. And it's the way that the Big Ten feels about Maryland now. Did they need to do that? No. Should they have done that? Probably not. Did they need Rutgers? No. Should they have done that? Probably not. The Big 12 could look at themselves and say that about. I don't think they're actively saying that about Cincinnati or BYU or UCF or Houston. They could. They could. Yeah, well, sure. They could in 5 years, right? Nice
they're happy about adding BYU. That's for sure.
Right, and there could be question marks around the other three moving forward. Are there right now? Not yet, for sure. But again, Maryland's a much bigger school than Cincinnati, and their conference is questioning why they added them. I don't want that out of a Sacramento State or anybody in the Big 12 conference. But at the same time, you added a BYU who was coming from independence and didn't know exactly what you're going to. I mean, maybe they catch up and they go 5-7 off the bat. And now 2 years in, this has become a match made in heaven because of the revenue they bring in. You could get that from Sac State, though I agree with you. They're going to need some time in a Pac-12, in a revamped Pac-12 or in the AAC.
I mean, we're facilities, right? Like when you bring these recruits on campus, how quickly can you get facilities to compete with the other Big 12 schools on that part? Like the NIL compensation will be part of it too, but the guys come there and they're like, oh, our weight room, like just compared to what the other Big 12 schools have. It's not a shot at Sac State. It's just a difference in money that we're talking about over a long term. So how quickly does it take? And what does that rebuild look like? You mentioned the Pac-12. I think that'd be a place for them to absolutely start at if they're able to get up to that NIL threshold. But I don't know. This is different than Indiana, right? Like turning it around overnight, finding the right head coach, still having nice facilities up there versus Sac State's trying to get there. They're trying to add all these things, but there's a difference between not even being a top 10 FCS program. Like, could they be next year? Sure, they have been before, but they're not right now. And then all of a sudden competing in the Big 12. That's a massive leap.
Yep. Coming up, let's talk transfer portal not being a thing. We alluded to this a bit last week on Locked On Big 12, but it's gotten even worse. And JT's seen a player or two transfer in and out of Utah. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money has helped me because I'm 24, man. I don't know. I just look at my bank account and I'm like, oh, my money's gone. What happened to my money? That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. So I look and I'm like, oh, I spent $400 this month on food delivery. So then I stop, and now I have more money in my account. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place. Stop managing your money. Start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on that food delivery, and now I fixed it. You can, and this is maybe one of the best parts, you can even tally this all with your partner. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. Set goals, share your personal accounts, and do this without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year at Monarch Money. JT Westersill of Locked On Utes. Let me give you some names here. Will Howard, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Justin Fields, Joe Burrow. They're all transfers.
Yeah.
But what's different about this era of college football is the transfer portal. The NCAA has told us. They've said to you and me and everybody else that exists, the transfer portal doesn't exist. The Wisconsin kid that went to Miami, unenrolled from Wisconsin, unenrolled in Miami. And Nico Iamalieva, whatever his name is, he's gone from Tennessee, and the transfer portal hasn't even opened yet for the spring. We have bent all of the rules that the NCAA has laid out. That seems like a strong term too. We've bent all of these fake rules that the NCAA has put in place and just said, you know what? If you're a kid and you want to go wherever you want to go, you don't have to abide by our windows, and you can just unenroll from a school, re-enroll somewhere else. As it sits, the way the transfer portal is built, it doesn't really exist or serve a purpose. You can kind of just do whatever you want, and it's run so rampant, schools can't control it.
Yeah, it barely exists, I'll say, just because Nico can't join a spring ball team like right now. Like he could not roll up to someone's spring practice and start practicing today. But he can do that in a week or so. I'll say Nico Iamalieva is my best guess at it. I'll throw my ring in the hat too. But Amaliva is really funny right now too. Drake, the transfer portal is the bigger story, but just really quick. Like I think Saturday was a dark day for college athletics with Nico deciding that, hey, I'm going to leave Tennessee. Like a program where he's won at, has success, has a chance to eventually win a national championship there, like getting $2 million in NIL and deciding to leave for $4 million. Like that's bleak. And I think also like even for Big 12 teams, I don't know about everyone else, but like if Devin Dampier, Utah's quarterback, I think he's capable of special things. I'm very much concerned about him leaving for NIL compensation, but just the fact that guys are willing to leave such great situations, a chance to be a legend like that. And I know it's double the money, but he had a chance to earn so much by being a Tennessee legend, setting himself up for NFL success too. So I think it's a really bad situation what's going on there. But back to the transfer portal thing real quick. Yeah, the portal's a mess right now. I mean, all of the different things that are going on, we see with it too. Everyone's trying to get it under control. Drake, you know what else is also really unfortunate is all these coaches complain about they don't like the transfer portal and everything. Yet, who's the one that we like? If you're going to transfer and you're getting money from said school, that still comes from that school and head coach. So even though the schools don't like it, they're also part of the problem because they continue to allow this to happen and use it to their advantage. So it's really messy, and I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
I think so. And there's not this governing body that the NCAA is supposed to be who is policing any of it. There is no czar of the transfer portal of NIL who can say, no, wrong, you did a bad thing, we're going to punish you. And again, if I am, let's say I'm Isaac Wilson, who entered the transfer portal and then unentered, right? That's how crazy this entire thing is. If I'm Isaac Wilson or Jake Retzlaff, to give it to the other side, or Sawyer Robertson, and I decide in the spring I don't want to play for Baylor anymore. If the transfer portal window is closed, all I effectively have to do is just sign papers saying I've unenrolled from Baylor University. I re-enroll at Utah, Mississippi State, Missouri, and from there, I apply for eligibility through the NCAA, which at this point seems like a blanket yes. Anybody who applies can receive it. And I've gone outside of the bounds of time and space to do whatever I want. And the second, JT, here's what is so complex about this if you're the NCAA. The second those 4 letters push back, get sued. And they're really bad at winning lawsuits. Like they're talented as hell at losing lawsuits. That's where I don't understand. Is there a line to be drawn? Should there be a line? Because at this point, especially with NIL, we are talking about professional sport free agency when we talk about what the transfer portal has become.
I couldn't believe the courts ruled.
Whoa. Pause.
Yeah.
Pause. Sorry.
What?
Free agency, but somehow with less formality. Like even in free agency, when a guy signs with another team, you're like, hey, well, your draft pick has to be traded here. You lose this thing or you have to give them money. Nope. There's even less stipulations in college football than professional free agency.
Yeah, guys will enter the portal and everything and it'll be like, oh, they have a do not contact tag on them. Like, what does that even mean? The whole point is like you're entering the portal for the first time. Like now you're supposed to have your options. That we all know what goes on behind the scenes. But like that's the whole point of it too. You mentioned the NCAA. I am still surprised that the courts ruled in favor of the Diego Pavia thing. I respect that he's trying to make his money and all of that. but I just think that's a really bad precedent to set as that guy. Like that is a year of eligibility. That's how it's always been. And I think it's the right thing to do. Like you have 4 years, your JUCO experience is part of that experience. And I don't feel like because you weren't good enough your freshman year to capitalize on those resources that now because you are, you can't. No, that's what the 4-year clock of eligibility is for. So it's really messy. And there are so many loopholes you mentioned, Drake. The whole thing that happened at Wisconsin to Miami. I mean, my goodness, I don't know how they get a handle on this. And I mean, doesn't it feel like we're heading for almost like athletes just being treated as employees? So then we're gonna have guys getting cut, and there's already reports just all over the place. Like I'm not even talking about Big 12 schools, but like some guy will be like, "Oh, they said they'd give me this in NIL, and then they didn't need it." So it's just really messy right now. I do not like the direction that college sports is headed in, and that's a big thing with so a guy like Nico, I couldn't fathom transferring even like 2 years ago. And once the portal started to even become a thing, but it's like, yeah, he's still he's a starting quarterback. They just made the playoff last year. Like, where is he going to go? And he goes too. So I don't know how they restrict any of this. I don't know how they enforce it. In part because of what we talked about with the courts too, and then feeling like, hey, you can't restrict guys. So it is a massive mess. And I don't know what the answer is to it, Drake. I don't know how we fix this, how we get it so that players are, hey, if you signed a 4-year deal, I don't necessarily feel like they have to stay in that. And that's where in some ways I'm with the players, but also just the time, and when guys transfer is weird too. Like Utah's had a ton of guys that have transferred during spring practices, which I'm just like, what value does it get you to enter the portal now? Wouldn't it be better to finish up spring, maybe even ball out in the spring game if you get that chance and then try to go somewhere? But rather than, no, you're just going to go off on your own and do your thing. And everyone's got their different reasons, but I don't get it. And yeah, I mean, I do not have a good solution on how you solve this because of how many different loopholes there are. And I definitely wish the NCAA could figure out how to get it under control. But I also want, like, if I was sitting there, I don't know how, because every time I see someone bring up a point of, oh, just do this. No, there's loopholes around that, because at the end of the day, like, it's their decision what school they want to go to. So they usually have a way out of everything.
Yeah. If I want to leave my job at Deloitte to go to KPMG, it's my decision to leave my job at Deloitte and go to KPMG. And that's what college athletics have become, a job that you're leaving to take a different job elsewhere that has a better opportunity. Coming up, Utah fans are mad at BYU, but abnormally, for some reason, in the middle of April. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, today's show is brought to you by Supply House. Look, I bought a house recently, and I've been trying to remodel it because that's the thing you do with a new house usually. And I'm struggling to go to the local stores and find what I need. How about I order it online and get it fast with Supply House? HVAC, electrical work, plumbing. Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Easy to use website packed with helpful resources. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. You'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. It's your turn. Join that Trade Master program at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Go to supplyhouse.com and do it today. JT Westersill of Locked On Utes. It's been an interesting topic this last week or so about BYU, NIL, how they're treating it with Rob Wright, college basketball, and somehow online, on Twitter, Utah fans and even on Cougar Board have wedged their way into the conversation. There's been a lot of talk about that state of Utah, these two programs, in the last 7 days because they've dominated the headlines based on this, the way that BYU spends its money. There was a tweet that I sent you, and it's what a lot of Utah fans got upset with. And it was a tweet from Ben Criddle, who is a friend of this program and someone that I have listened to on the radio in Salt Lake. And the entire crux of this is how BYU treats its NIL. So this is from Travis Hansen. He says, the quote to Criddle, there is this narrative that we outbid people, and we don't. We just outlove them, outdevelop them, and outpurpose them. And then a Utah Twitter account picked it up and said, this is, foolish. It's very Dabo Swinney. It seems like BYU is outbidding people for Rob Wright, $3.5 million. I don't know who was offering more. I wouldn't be surprised if BYU's outbidding. But Utah fans have almost taken offense or brought up the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints membership of BYU in this entire NIL conversation. Can you explain why Utah fans are so actively, they're always upset, but so actively upset at BYU over this NIL storyline?
Nice little throw at the end there. Okay, first of all, I mean, I can just sum it up simply why everyone's upset. It's rival. I mean, anytime your rival is doing something and good players, it's going to bring about frustration. So that's why a lot of fans are upset. But yeah, and there's been some comments. I'm not touching on any of the religious stuff. That's just a really, like, I've seen people accuse, hey, they're getting it from here. That's not what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, like, yes, BYU is able to outbid teams. I don't know where that narrative has come from. I've heard before, too, about BYU, like, offering players more even for, like, some Utah guys before. Like that, hey, they offered more for them, and then they go there. Like, that's something that's happened. Like, I don't. And why is it a bad thing to outbid people, to have those resources, to do those things, to have Ryan Smith able to provide? So I don't understand what that's a bad thing. Like, that's where it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's pretty clear that BYU is able to outbid and offer some of these players more money. I don't understand why that's a negative that BYU has been able to raise those. And it's a negative for Utah because it's like, dang, they're getting some of the best transfers and all of these things. But these guys, like, a guy like Rob Wright, like, it's not like he grew up a BYU basketball fan. So he's going, yes, now maybe was there another team that offered the same amount and he fell in love with BYU and decided to go there? Sure. But like, BYU can clearly outbid teams. They've shown the willingness to do that. And why is that a bad thing? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all why it would be. And I know there's the reasons because, like we said, there's some things that have been said about, like, hey, this is where they get their money from. I'm not here to talk about any of that. I'm just simply saying, why is it bad to outbid somebody? Yeah, Utah fans are just frustrated because BYU is getting really good players. And it's going to be really hard for Utah in basketball, especially, to beat BYU next year. If you can land the number one player in the country, how can you not outbid teams? Like, in terms of, if you want to say, hey, sure, we can't outbid like the number one team. Sure, you can outbid almost every other program in the country except for like 5 to 10 schools. Like, if you can land the number one player in the country, you put yourself in that spot, you're going to be able to outbid most people. So I don't understand why that's a bad thing. It sets BYU up for future success, which is why Utah fans don't like it.
Why BYU is, I don't want to say flaunting, but the money that the program is, not the program, the money their NIL collective is spending right now seems pretty public. And some BYU sources, reporters have said, hey, look, when it was under the table, BYU didn't do it. There's an honor code to follow. Now that it's above table, BYU has a lot of money. They have a lot of donors, a lot of business owners. They're going to utilize that to succeed in college athletics the same way anybody else, the Power Four, would. Where is Utah? Is Utah just as rich in NIL? Are they just as competitive in the NIL game? They're just silent with how they do it? Because BYU does seem to be pretty public with the fact that they are ready to give out a good chunk of cash to these players.
Utah's gotten better in the NIL department. I think the fact that they were able to keep some of their best players is a good sign. Now, the fact that you have a guy like Keanu Tanavasa going from Utah to BYU, like, was NIL the only factor there? No, I don't think so. But I'll also say, like, when in one moment you're saying,
it wasn't NIL, it was the hug. It was the hug after the game.
Yeah, it was the hug. Exactly. Go all the way back to that. Yeah. But when you commit, when this is what Tanavasa, like, we're going to go back to this just briefly. Like, he said he was going to stay at Utah. Then he actually even shaded another player for leaving Utah. Then all of a sudden he goes, okay, I'm going to have the chance for him now. But like, that's interesting. Very interesting that was the approach. It wasn't as soon as the portal opened, hey, that's Carson Ryan, the tight end who did that. That's what he did. He entered the portal right away. Then he went to BYU. That wasn't what Tanavasa did. So, but going back to the NIL aspects of this, Utah has been able to keep some of their top players. They can compete NIL-wise, but can they compete on BYU's level? They got to do it in order for me to say that. BYU is the one, especially as of late. Like, I made this point on my show, and I've seen some people get frustrated at me saying I'm being a downer. But hey, like, when you have, in the span of the past 2 weeks, BYU's landed 2 4-star players in the state of Utah over Utah. That's a bad sign there too. And NIL's not the only reason I'm saying that is, but I'm just saying, hey, when you're landing higher talent, that does show that BYU is right now in a stronger position if they're landing more recent 4-stars. Last time Utah added a 4-star was in July of last year. Like, that's, if you want to prove that, like, hey, you're on equal playing field, go out and do that. Basketball, they landed Dumbonsa. The number one player in the country is coming to BYU. How can I say Utah is on the same level as them when they haven't landed those players? So Utah NIL is getting better. I've liked the number of additions they've made for the men's basketball portal. They're clearly investing more in basketball. They got a GM in there now with former NBA experience, like assistant coach and Alex Jensen, like a lot of exciting momentum. But they also haven't landed a guy the level of Rob Wright. There's no one there there's no one that's level of Dumbonsa. So it feels like BYU is NIL more basketball heavy right now than football, even though they got some good players for football. I mentioned Tonavasa being one of them, right? But it definitely feels like it's more of a basketball thing. Utah has NIL. They were able to keep some of their top guys. They've added a couple of nice pieces, but they haven't landed anywhere near the guys that BYU has, especially as of late with a couple of these. So how can I say that they're on equal playing field? Doesn't mean you can't beat them. I mean, we saw Utah earlier this year beat BYU in basketball at their home court, but they weren't favored in that game. And that's something I'm very interested to monitor going forward. Utah will definitely be able to compete with BYU. How many times going forward will Utah be favored in the NIL era when so far BYU has shown they have better NIL resources? So that's something I'm really curious to see, Drake.
Do we see from your chair, because I get berated often for hosting Locked On Big 12 and talking frequently about BYU and Utah. It's the biggest rivalry in the conference, and both the fan bases are as charged as any fan bases in this league. From your chair, I don't need you to wax poetic about BYU, but I want to know, are they the most, I don't want to say the richest, but are they in the best spot financially of any Big 12 school, given where they sit right now athletically? And part of that is, again, their affiliation to the fastest growing faith in the world, even though that faith doesn't directly give money to athletics.
I think it's them and Texas Tech. And Texas, what they did in the like before this football transfer portal, I probably would have said BYU. Yeah. And then Tech brings in a top 3 portal class. And I'm like, whoa, I took notice of that, especially when BYU did not bring in that level of football talent. And what Tech also did, they kept topping. So once again, high level of NIL there as well. So right now, I would lean Tech slightly right now, even though BYU's landed in Bonsa. But if we're doing both sports, it's not really close for me there too. And Tech just landed a pass rusher from Stanford, right, Drake?
Yeah, out of the portal. Yes. Kind of shocking. Yeah, one of the best.
That's another one. Like all these high level football players, which football is still the king sports, that's where Tech has done better than BYU. And the difference in the gap between the two seems to be smaller in basketball, where BYU is better, versus in football, it's a much bigger gap if we are just looking based on the talent. But at least right now, to me, it seems like the 3 programs most set up for success in the future of the NIL era in the Big 12, BYU, Texas Tech, and I'll even say Colorado. There's some rumors out there with Nico going there. Like, we'll see what Colorado does. But Deion seems to have a lot of people on the hype train. I like a lot of things about Deion. So, I totally support and get what he has going too. But, yeah, I mean, you don't see, Utah's not bringing in that level of talent. Utah they brought in some good transfer players, but no one the level of the guys that Tech was able to add to. And Utah was at their best when they were able to recruit and develop. And that's what they're going to have to do once again to compete in this conference, because unless something changes, they have fine NIL resources. They do not have Texas Tech and BYU NIL resources based on what we've seen. I mean, those are the 3, like I said, those are the 3 right now that I look at that are set up for the best success in the NIL era. And obviously Colorado is only funding football, because we saw what happened with basketball this last season. Drake, do you feel like that's the top 3, or would you throw maybe a West Virginia or somewhere?
No, that's good. I think that's your 3. And it's tough to argue against. I just wanted to know if somebody outside of the chair of Locked On Big 12 sees it the same way. And it's looking very clear to everyone in the league who follows the league that those are the 3 schools at the top of this. And I would rephrase it to say Texas Tech, BYU, Deion Sanders, right?
Yeah, it's 1,000%. We're talking about a team that was the doormat of the Pac-12 for a couple of those last years. So it's all Deion. And once again, I think Utah fans might listen to this and be mad at me, oh my gosh, JT, you're giving BYU their flowers. I'm literally just reading the numbers. They have added 2 guys that are clearly higher than what Utah could do NIL-wise. That's what this comes down to. And that's where I will give the Cougars credit for that, absolutely, because that's what is going on. I try to call it like I see it, despite what I get from some BYU.
He's a journalist. He's a consummate professional.
The J and JT stands for journalism.
Big J and JT. Speaking of JT, where can folks find more of your journalistic work?
Yeah, you can find it at JT Wistersill on X, on Locked On Utes as well, on YouTube, publish Monday through Friday, and do some crossovers too. Also have some on our Big 12 Squad show coming up later this week too, which I'm sure we'll also be talking some NIL related things, because it's still crazy.
Have to. That's coming out on Thursday night, 6 p.m. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.